Hello everyone, welcome along to the latest episode of the TurfCast podcast pre-game show where we get the lowdown on the opposition by talking to a fan of the opposition. Normally a YouTuber, sometimes someone who owns a podcast, sometimes both. Like this week, we are joined by Rich from the Over and Over and Over Again Arsenal podcast and YouTube channel. But we'll get into that into a little bit. Poor start to the season from Burnley. Can we turn it around against Arsenal? I do want to quickly, before we get into the show, talk about all this stuff that's been out there this week on social media and in the media, really, about Burnley's style of play and their tackling. I mean, let's get one thing straight. Burnley are the record breakers for consecutive games without a red card. That's not an opinion. That is a fact. You can have an opinion about how Burnley play. That is your opinion. But it is a fact that we are the record holders without a red card. 97 games without a red card. Consecutive. 97 consecutive games without a red card. That nobody has achieved that before in Premier League history. And every single game, it is a new record. And what annoys me at the minute is this week, we have seen a Liverpool player break his ankle thanks to that challenge from Strike, is that how you pronounce it, Struik? I thought it was a good challenge. Honestly, I thought it was a good challenge. That just might be my Burnley background and enjoying seeing Burnley play in a certain way that makes me think that. I can understand why it's kind of been given as a red at the same time, though, because he does leave the ground. I won't say he comes from behind either, which at first I thought he did. He doesn't come. He kind of sort of like comes from round him. He is behind him, but he comes from round Harvey Elliott and wins the ball. That is, for me, the important factor. He doesn't get the man first. He obviously catches the man with, I think, his trailing leg. And that is I suppose, why it's deemed dangerous. That one's an iffy one. I can see, I personally think it's a good challenge, and I don't think he should have been sent off, but I can see the debate for him getting sent off. This week, we have played Everton. The worst challenge of the game was by Josh Brownhill for me in the first couple of minutes. Nothing said about that one. Then Richarlison clattered Ben Mee as well. Nothing said about that one. And yet Tarky does a good challenge. Tarky does a good challenge on Richarlison. He wins the ball. It is a good challenge. Everyone's like, oh, but he gets the man. He gets the man afterwards. And everyone's like, oh, there's all these. This is another thing that annoys me. Is this new craze of putting screenshots up. Any screenshot can paint any picture that you want it to do. I was having screenshots sent to me by Everton fans where the ball had long gone and then Tarky is kind of touching Richarlison a little bit with his follow-through. And I was like, he's nowhere near the ball. It's like, yeah, because Tarky's already won it, mate. It's gone. It's in the stand behind the goal. Behind Richarlison. It's gone. It's gone. So I do not understand this obsession with criticising Burnley and criticising Burnley's tackling, because we are ultimately, the facts say, one of the cleanest teams in the division. I think we are currently 6th in the Fair Play League. I think somebody said we finished 2nd in the Fair Play League last season. Now, feel free to prove me wrong if you want, because I haven't actually researched that. It's just something that I saw on Twitter, to be honest, and I know I shouldn't really do that, but I have done. But I've kind of made it my mission in recent weeks to sort of like constantly try and shut these negative narratives about Burnley down, but it's becoming tight. It's becoming so loud now, these narratives. Everybody's doing it. You're having people writing articles about Burnley need to be, what was the word he said? Regulated. A team with no red cards for 97 games need to be regulated. This guy was an Arsenal fan. In that time, Arsenal have had 5 red cards. Granit Xhaka grabbed Westwood by the throat last season, but yet it's us that needs to be regulated. What a load of rubbish. It really is a load of rubbish, but it's becoming tiresome now, and all we can do is just keep doing what we do, keep doing it right, making sure you don't give the refs an excuse to send you off, because if they get an excuse to send you off now, I've got a sneaky feeling after this little rant as well, I might look a bit stupid, but I've got a sneaky feeling we might get a red card this weekend, simply because of the noise that's been on social media, in the media. These terms like Burnley need to be regulated. Gary Neville saying, it has no place. These kind of tackles have no place in today's game. What kind of tackle is that, Gary? A tackle where you win the ball? Like, people keep clipping clips up of Gary doing a tackle against Barnsley. I'm not really into that, because I do agree that football has changed a lot since then. But we need to be careful. Football is going to become a non-contact sport, and people have been saying it for so long, and I'm sitting here sounding like an old man. Yeah, I just wanted to have a little rant, to be honest, at the start of this video, because the noise on social media this week has been an absolute disgrace. And you know what? I don't necessarily mind when it's on social media, because football fans on Twitter especially are quite toxic. They'll say anything for likes and things like that and retweets. So a lot of the stuff they say, they don't even believe themselves. But it's the fact that it's been in the actual media this week. We've had, Sky Sports articles basically criticising us. You've had Gary Neville criticising us. You've had a random Arsenal fan who works for Football London who I've never heard of. He's probably just trying to make a name and get a few people following him, just saying some ridiculous things. The facts are, and I'll end it on this bit before we get into the pre-game show, the facts are we are not a dirty side. We are physical, but we are not dirty. That is not your opinion. That is not my opinion. That is a fact. It may be your opinion that we are dirty, but I can give you a fact that proves you wrong. Anyway, enough of me ranting. Let's get into the pre-game show. Right, and just like that, we are joined by Rich Gooner, which I'm sure is not his real name, or I'm sure he'd like it to be, from Over and Over and Over Again at the Arsenal podcast. How you doing, Rich?
Yeah, very well, yeah. I mean, I might change my name by Deepo, actually, just so that it will be my name.
Yeah, you change it to Rich Gooner. I'll change mine to Joe Claret. In fact, when I was growing up, I remember when I was at uni, so not really growing up, but when Facebook were quite new, people used to always have like random middle names on Facebook. They'd have like Jeff something Brown. Mine was always Joe Dingle Redmond. And I think like a few people at uni used to start calling me Dingle, because of course that's what we get called and criticised by like local rivals. But anyway, let's get into it. Arsenal Burnley this weekend. Let's have a talk about your start to the season so far then, first of all. We obviously get into the actual match. Obviously 1 win now, which is 1 win more than us. 3 points is it you've got, or is it 4 points from the opening 4 games? I think it's 3, isn't it? Yeah, 3. Tough start in terms of fixtures, though, to be fair. So how do you assess your start to the season?
Yes, I mean, you could say it's been a tough start. Obviously, we played Brentford in the first game away, which was on the Friday night in front of the TV, their first game in the Premier League in front of fans and stuff. It was always going to be a tough game, that. And then Chelsea and Man City, 2 of the teams that's probably going to be challenging for the title. So the fixtures didn't help us out. But I was disappointed in the way that we played in all 3 of those games. You can understand losing, certainly to Chelsea and Man City, brilliant teams that they are, but it was a manner in which we played. We didn't, we kind of almost accepted that we were going to lose to them 2 teams in particular before we'd even started. And for an Arsenal team, I don't believe that's acceptable. I don't mind losing games so much if we've competed and we've done all we could have done. I mean, the Chelsea game, it was far too easy for Chelsea. They could have won that 4 or 5-0 if they'd really put the effort in the second half. They just kept the ball, did the job, got the win. Man City, obviously, we did lose 5-0 and it could have been a lot worse. Their goalkeeper that day played well. So, yes, points tally is disappointing. I would have, looking at the fixtures from those first 4 games, I would have expected something from Brentford, possibly a draw. Obviously, would have expected to have beaten Norwich at home, which we ended up doing, and would have maybe hoped for perhaps a draw from Chelsea at home, maybe, if we turned out and played well. So a little bit disappointed with the points tally, but more disappointed with how we've been playing. Norwich was slightly better. We had a few players back from injury, and it was a slightly better performance. But again, we kind of struggled for a 1-0 win. We're not scoring many goals. 1 goal in 4 games. Even you guys who haven't got a win yet have scored more goals than us. And, that's unusual, isn't it, for an Arsenal team not to be scoring? And that's a worry as well. We're not even, I know against Norwich, apparently we had 30 shots at goal. Not that I remember most of them. And we scored 1 goal, which isn't great if that's true. Whereas in the previous games, we struggled to create anything. Man City, I think we had 1 shot in the whole game. So there's issues there in terms of creating chances and taking chances. And it's a worry. But hopefully now we've got some players back, things can start to improve. But it's been a poor start. There's no getting away from it. We were bottom of the league before last week. So it shows how bad a start it was. Regardless of the fixtures, you've got to play everybody through the season, haven't you? And when you play them, the top teams, the good teams, you've got to be ready. And you've got to be able to at least give them a game, make it hard for them. And we didn't do that.
How do you feel Arsenal are in comparison to these I'm going to say bigger clubs then, but in terms of City and probably Chelsea as well, maybe it's probably a little bit harsh. But in these clubs that are thereabouts at the top of the table is what I'm trying to say. You do seem a bit of a distance away from them, and you have done for quite a while. But obviously, this time 15 years ago, you were battling Chelsea out for the Premier League title. City were nowhere to be seen. You're battling United out. Liverpool again were nowhere to be seen. But now you're the team that's fallen away. And I know football goes in peaks and troughs and things like that, and Arsenal probably will eventually come back. But it does seem like, to me, from the outside looking in, that you are a very, very long distance away from these, you know, your Chelseas, Liverpools, Uniteds, not United, sorry, City. And if you are going to be challenging for a title again, it probably won't be within the next 5 years. It must have been difficult to watch the club sort of like fall. I'm trying to not be as harsh as it sounds, but sort of like fall from grace as much, because you've gone from winning the Premier League and breaking records to now not even being in Europe. So it must have been difficult to watch the fall.
It has been, yeah. I mean, it's like anything really. You know, if you're used to, or when you've been used to seeing your team be successful, play good football, win a lot of trophies, then when that, as you said, football goes in cycles. Nobody's successful forever. It always finishes at some point, and you know, we found it a lot more difficult in recent years. And the fall away has actually been, I suppose it was more gradual in the final years of Arsene Wenger. We were gradually moving away from challenging for titles to just getting into the top four, and eventually not even getting in the top four. And now we're not even in Europe, as you said. So it was quite steady for a while. And now, since Arsene Wenger was gone, it's dropped away even more dramatically. And now we're almost a mid-table team at the moment, 2 8th place finishes. And it has been difficult to see that happening, but it hasn't been surprising. The way the club's run, the owners don't seem to care about success on the pitch. And I believe that we've made poor choices in the managers that have replaced Wenger, unfortunately, which has led us to the situation that we're in. And in terms of looking at the other clubs, yeah, I mean, we're miles away from where Man City are. We're miles away from where Chelsea are. And we're miles away from most of the teams that are challenging for the top 4 places now, unfortunately. And it's happened quite quickly. And I know last season you could look at it and say, I think we ended up, was it 3 or 4 points away from finishing in the top 4? Actually, in the end, although we finished 8th, it was quite tight ahead of us. That was on the back of a run at the end of the season of winning 5 games in a row, 5 games with no pressure against teams with very little to play for. And they were simple games for us to win, really. And unfortunately, in the end, that's maybe put us in a better position at the end than we maybe deserved over the previous 33 games that we played, when we were really poor for most of them. So, you know, we are a long way away from where we should be as a club. And unfortunately, with the transfer window that we've had, we spent a lot of money on a lot of young players for the future. It isn't going to help us close that gap immediately now, this season, or possibly next season either. And it's quite a frustrating time because, you know, Arsenal came out recently, the sort of head who deals with the transfer side of it came out and said, you know, what we've done is we're building for the future, basically saying, well, we're going to write off this season, we're going to possibly write off next season, and we're going to hopefully have a half-decent team in 2 or 3 years. But in 2 or 3 years' time, some of these players would have left probably. The manager may well be different, and the whole process starts again, doesn't it? Because managers don't get time, you know, regardless. And players don't stay around, do they? You know, we've got some good young players. Are they going to want to stay at Arsenal if we're staying out of Europe? We're in mid-table, when clubs like Man City or Chelsea or Man United or Liverpool might come knocking and say, look, we're interested in buying you. Bukayo Saka's an example of that. Apparently clubs are sniffing around already. And he's not going to want to stay at Arsenal, is he, if we're not challenging for anything, because he's a great young player. He wants to build a great career in the game, doesn't he? And we're in a difficult situation at the moment. And I don't really know how it's going to pan out. I agree with what you said. Arsenal will at some stage be back challenging again, I'm sure, because history shows that that's happened. But football's different now, isn't it? I don't think any of us really know what the future is going to be like in football. Who would have thought Man City and Chelsea would have got the investment that they've had in the last 20 years to become the success that they had? And I'm hoping that it does come back round and we somehow manage to turn this around and become successful again. But at the moment, I can't see how, without a big, massive outside investment, I can't see how we can do it now. Yeah,
I agree. I think the next 5-10 years, like I said, I can't see Arsenal doing it within the next 5-10 years. But as football goes in cycles, I do think eventually you'll be back. And I don't think City and Chelsea will have this investment forever as well. So eventually they'll fall. But you touched on it briefly there, like this lad's comments, how Arsenal will be good in maybe 3 years again, or have an half decent season in 3 years. That just sums Arsenal up to me. It feels like from the owners or whoever's representing the club, you're always being sold this dream. It was the same when the Emirates were built. It's like, oh, we'll build this and then we'll be successful. And that after that, it's like, all right, we've built this now. Look at what you've got. We can't buy a few players for a few years, but just wait a bit. Then we'll be successful. For the last 2 or 3 years, you've said, well, Arteta's coming in. He's not, an experienced manager, but he will be soon. So just be patient. and then we'll be successful. And now it's the same again. Well, we've brought these young players, just be patient. You're always being told to trust the process and be patient. But surely there comes a time when you can't be patient anymore, and your patience is going to run thin. And it seems to me like, your patience, not you personally, but Arsenal fans' patience has run thin quite a long time ago. Is that a fair assessment?
I think it is, actually. And it's probably a good way of looking at it, because since we moved to the Emirates, which was 2006, it's now 2021. So it's been a long time that we've been there. And I do feel as though maybe circumstances, when we originally set out the plans to move stadium, it was in the year 2000, when, you know, we were successful on the pitch. And there was only really Arsenal, Man United and Liverpool that you could say were realistically big challengers regularly for the title. You know, Chelsea hadn't had their investment, Man City hadn't. And in the consequent kind of years while we were building the stadium and getting it all sorted, things changed on the football landscape. Chelsea became a big club. And since we moved, Man City got their investment 2 years later. And suddenly, instead of just probably the club probably thought at that time, you know, we can still compete with Man United and Liverpool. We'll still be in the top 3 or 4 anyway, not anticipating what was going to happen. So I think maybe the timing was a bit unfortunate. But yeah, since then, of course, we was in a bit of a tricky situation financially. We had to sell our best players every year or so, because we had to do that just to keep the club basically in business, if you like. You know, we couldn't afford to keep buying and buying. We had to sell because of the stadium. So we had a difficult time, and it became more difficult as more teams got more investment and overtook us. And suddenly we found ourselves, I say, instead of competing for titles, just about struggling to get in the top 4. And yes, I think Arsenal fans were sold a dream at the beginning that hasn't quite worked out. And since then, the club have been promising us constantly that things are going to get better, and all they've done is got worse. And I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not totally surprised with the owners that we've got. They took over, well, they bought into the club, I think it was 2008, and I think they took full control about 2018. And you can see the decline in that period. And it's not a coincidence that you get new people involved financially, you get new owners eventually who take control of the club, and things get worse. And it's obvious that that's the problem. And this is the situation that we're in. And I think until we do look at that as a club, maybe get new owners in, sell the club to someone who really cares about making the club successful in the way that the Man City owners have done and the way the Chelsea owners have done, Arsenal aren't going to be able to fulfill that kind of ambition and dream that the fans have got. Now, I think one of the problems has been, because the club have realised that they can't reach the heights that they promised, they keep trying to put it off and say, it will come, just stick with us. You know, and this summer it's about, well, we bought these young players. Well, the problem for me is the owners, and the second problem is the manager. And while those two things are still in place, I don't care who we buy. We could get Ronaldo, and we would still struggle because we've got the wrong manager and we haven't got the right infrastructure around. So the club are in a mess. And you're right, what you said, and your assessment is spot on. And I don't know how long this process is meant to go on for, because it's gone on for 15 years already and we still haven't got anywhere other than backwards. And who knows how we're going to turn that around. And I don't think we can with the current people running the club. And that's the biggest problem I think that we've got. But we'll have to see what happens. Hopefully things can change. And we're hearing rumours that maybe other owners are interested in buying a club. They may possibly want to sell. The Kroenkes might want to sell. And maybe things will change. But at this moment in time, I can't see anything changing. While even if we change manager, that isn't going to solve all our problems. It will solve some of them on the pitch maybe, but it's not going to really solve the ultimate issues at the club. And it's not going to be able to suddenly transport us from mid-table to challenging for the top 4 or challenging for the title. It's more than that that's needed.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question then. I was going to say, like, where does the buck stop then for this decline? And obviously you mentioned the owners quite a lot there, so that would probably suggest to me that you do feel it is predominantly the owners. What is it that they're doing wrong? Is it lack of investment? Is it incorrect decisions? What is it that they're doing wrong?
I mean, I suppose previously it's sort of been a lack of investment, although maybe you can kind of look at the stadium situation. You know, they came into the club not long after we'd moved stadium, and there was the financial implications of that. And obviously this summer we've spent the most money, certainly in transfer fees. I know it's not just about that, because you've got to look at wages. I mean, what Man United have spent out on wages have probably far eclipsed what we've paid out this summer in total. But in transfer fees, we've spent the most, haven't we, in the Premier League? So you can't really say it's a lack of investment necessarily. I mean, we spent £72 million on Nicolas Pepe 2 years ago. You know, we've been investing in the team. I think we've invested badly. I think we've had the wrong people doing jobs behind the scenes in terms of recruitment, and I think that we've had a lot of changes. There's been in the last 2 or 3 years, we've had, you know, a whole complete revamp of the scouting system at the club. We've had lots of different movements behind the scenes in terms of recruitment and all that kind of stuff. And it's like they're just getting people in for 6 months. Then they're getting somebody else to replace them in 6 months, and they're not getting any stability behind the scenes. And what they need to do is they need to find a system that they want to go with. And yes, now we could have done this 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years ago and be in a much better place now, but because we haven't, this is what's happening. And unfortunately now we're in a situation where, regardless of what happens, I think that it's still going to take a long time, because you've got to get the right things in place behind the scenes, and that's what they've done badly. I think the recruitment side on the pitch has been poor, but the recruitment side off the pitch has been even worse in terms of the people that buy the players and negotiate the contracts. We've got a load of players we can't get rid of, and we haven't been able to get rid of because they're on ridiculous contracts that it's led to the point where they're not good enough to play for the team. We don't want them, but no one will buy them. We've had to sell off the contract of Ozil. We had to basically rip his contract up to get rid of him. There was Willian, who apparently paid off his contract himself to get out of the club. You know, these are decisions that are holding us back, because we've had to pay wages to players because of the contracts that they're on, which has meant that we can't invest more heavily in better players. So we've had to buy these young players because we haven't had any choice. You can buy a young player, you haven't got to pay them as much money. If we was to buy established players, their contracts are going to be worth a lot more, and on a weekly, monthly basis, that's paying out more money than we can afford. And that's the problem. We can get these young players we can pay, I don't know, 25 million, but we can do it in installments. So it's not a big outlay. But when you've got a contract, you've got to pay that every month. You've got no choice, because that's the contract that they're on. And that's been the problem, the recruitment side, and the people that the owners have been employing to do those jobs have been the wrong choices. And they've even known it, because they've got rid of them quite quickly. We'll make the right choices in the first place, stick with the right people, and we may eventually turn things around. And that's been the problem. That's what they've done badly. They've not necessarily not invested. I think they've invested money. We've spent money in the transfer market. We spent it badly, and the people that they've employed to do those jobs, recruitment, scouting, all that kind of stuff, has been dreadful. And that's the biggest issue, I think.
Talk to me about Arteta then, because I think you've already said you'd rather have somebody else at the helm than Arteta. It tends to be, I think more Arsenal fans these days do tend to be Arteta out than Arteta in. Having said that, I would say it's still probably a decent split down the middle. I think Arsenal fans always seem to be arguing amongst each other, whether they're Arteta in or Arteta out. You can't just be an Arsenal fan. You're either an Arsenal fan and you want Arteta, or you're an Arsenal fan and you don't want Arteta. From the outside looking in, I just think I don't see why. It didn't work for Chelsea. Chelsea tried it with Lampard. It didn't work. I don't think it's working for you. You tried it with Arteta. It isn't working. And I don't necessarily think it's working for Man United and Ollie as well. United fans would argue and say, oh, well, we've started doing better this season. Look at how well we're doing. Look at this, look at that. I think that's because of the investment and the players that have been coming in rather than the manager. I think with a decent manager, United will be knocking on the door of the Premier League title. So I don't see this new fad of bringing in inexperienced club legends as managers. I think let them do their apprenticeship elsewhere. Like the Lampard situation, it failed at Derby, then was rewarded by being brought into Chelsea. It just didn't make any sense. Yeah. And it's a similar sort of thing with Arteta. All right, he did an apprenticeship as such under Pep, but I feel like he needed to go out there and he needed to apply his trade in a way to what Gerrard has done. I think Gerrard will become a very good manager because of the way that he's done it. He's not been pushed into the deep end and sank like, in my opinion, Lampard did, and Arteta is doing, and Ole kind of is doing. So what do you think? Obviously, I know you're Arteta out, but what do you think is the best way forward then for yourselves and Arsenal and Arteta? Is it parting ways? Is it give him till the end of this season, then maybe part ways? And on top of that question, who would you want to come in if he did leave?
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm Arteta out or Arteta in. I don't think it's necessarily about that. For me, what I want is what's best for the club. I want us to be getting better results and play better football. And Arteta has had 18 months or so in the job, and the results. Yes, we won the FA Cup, and that was great. But since then, he hasn't managed to build on that success, and it's becoming more and more obvious that he's not been able to do the job that was necessary. It was a tough job when he came in. You know, Emery had a tough job before in replacing Wenger, and it was always going to be difficult. And I think we did need, and we do need, someone with more experience. I mean, Arteta is probably a very, very good coach. He's probably a very good number 2. In fact, he was a very good number 2 at Manchester City. That doesn't automatically mean you're going to be a good number 1. And I agree. What he should have done was possibly he's gone and been a number 1 at a smaller club with less expectations, with maybe a slightly easier an easier job to come into, you know, maybe in a championship or lower, learn about being a number 1, learn about being a manager. And then if that went well and he was successful, then obviously he could then take that in to, you know, becoming at a bigger club, whether that's Arsenal or elsewhere. But he obviously wouldn't have left his cosy job at number 2 because he played for Arsenal, his most recent club he'd played for. And, you know, I just feel maybe he wouldn't have done that. He wouldn't have gone and been manager of, say, a Derby or a Nottingham Forest or whoever it might have been. I think he would only have left Man City's number 2 to become manager of an Arsenal or a club like that, or possibly an Everton, who he played for as well. So I can see why Arsenal did it, you know, because he was probably wasn't going to demand the sort of signings that other top managers would be demanding, because he didn't have the experience to back it up. He couldn't say, well, give me all these players and I'll make us successful, because he couldn't back it up because he hadn't done the job before. So he probably was quite happy to accept what he was given in terms of a budget. Some managers come in and they expect a budget. Like Mourinho, for example, would have expected a massive budget to come into Arsenal, and Arsenal wouldn't have been prepared to do that. And so I understood why they got him. Excuse me. So I just don't think it's working out. I like Arteta, but he's not the right man for what we need. So I think what we need to do is try to, I mean, just getting rid of, excuse me, just getting rid of Arteta isn't going to suddenly solve all our problems. I do believe that a better man manager and a better coach would get more out of his team. You look at what Tuchel did at Chelsea, you're looking at Lampard, the same players basically. He took over in what, December, January time. They were 8th or 9th in the league, Chelsea. With those same players, he got them in the top 4, won the Champions League. And now, just with the addition of mainly Lukaku, they're now going to be challenging for the title with the same players that Lampard had. And I believe that if we was to get a manager of that quality coming into this Arsenal team with the players that we've got, I'm not saying we'd win the Champions League or win the league or anything like that, but what we would do is, I believe we would be better. We would get better results. We would maybe be able to get back into Europe, into the top 6, which is where we need to be. Who that person would be is a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, there's a few managers knocking around in the Premier League I do like what Graham Potter's doing at Brighton. I think they play good football, and I think with better players, with a better you know, players that he can coach, I think he could do a really good job somewhere, and I wouldn't mind him being at Arsenal. He's a young coach. He's got experience of being a manager, and he's done well. He's done well in Europe as well. He was in Sweden before, wasn't it, or somewhere like that, where he had success. And then he's come to Brighton in the Premier League. And, you know, people say, well, they fight relegation every year. They do, but they're Brighton with no money. And he's done a fantastic job. And how they play football is good. So, you know, he's a great manager. I think he could do a better job at Arsenal than we've got currently. You know, I know Southampton are struggling with Hasselhoff, but he looks like he knows what he's doing. He can organise a team. Again, they've lost a few key players, and that's why they're struggling. So there's a few options that you could look at. I mean, obviously, then you're looking at the top. You know, obviously, Conte is probably the biggest one that everybody would love, because, you know, he could come in and transform things, but he would probably demand the sort of budget for transfers and players that we wouldn't offer him. So would he come to Arsenal? Because he would probably look at that and say, well, actually, no, you haven't got the ambition that I have as a club. So as much as I would love someone like Antonio Conte to become manager, I can't see that being possible with the way the club is at the moment. So I think we'd have to look at probably elsewhere in the Premier League, maybe, and look at coaches that understand the Premier League. I think it is a bit of a risk getting someone in from outside. There's a few managers in Europe that you could look at and say, well, yeah, they could potentially do a job. But I think it's a little bit more of a risk, a manager from abroad coming into the Premier League for the first time, because the Premier League offers a different challenge. And I know Tuchel's come in and done really well, and other managers have before, of course, you know, Arsene Wenger, for example. But I don't know, I would maybe rather see us looking at, you know, we've got a lot of homegrown players now in our squad. And I think maybe a manager who understands English football to come in. And I would say Graham Potter would probably be, if we're not going to get someone like Conte or a real top top draw manager. I think someone like Graham Potter would be, you know, if you're looking at a process, for example, I think Graham Potter would be perfect for a process because of what he's done so far in his managerial career. The sort of football he wants to play is an Arsenal kind of traditional style, isn't it? You know, getting the ball forward, playing, you know, not all this messing around, playing out from the back, getting the ball forward, playing football on the front foot, trying to attack teams and score goals. He just lacks the players to do it at Brighton. He's got the players at Arsenal to pull that off. And I think, for me, if I had to make a choice now, say, for example, if we lose tomorrow to you guys, if we lose to Tottenham next week, you've got to say Arteta's job's going to be hanging by a thread. And if that was going to be the case and they were thinking of moving him on, I would definitely be going to Graham Potter first and saying, is this a job that you'd be interested in?
Fair enough. Interesting. I'm always interested in like manager debates and next managers, because I always like try and envision Arsenal under Potter, and it kind of sounds like it might work. I understand your point of view. I think Brighton, they would be very good if they had a striker. I think that's the problem with Brighton. But Arsenal would be able to provide him with that, so that'd be interesting. But looking at this weekend, then, what sort of game are you expecting at Turf Moor on Saturday, tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, most seasons when we play you guys at Turf Moor, it's a very similar game. There's not a lot of goals generally. It's very, very tight. And, you know, historically, Arsenal have managed to just about shade it. You know, sometimes a few late controversial goals we've had over the years a couple of times. And there's been a couple of draws in the last two seasons. It's both been draws, hasn't there? So they're generally tight games. You know, we know what Burnley are like. They're quite physical, get the ball forward quickly, dangerous from set pieces. And they're things that we traditionally struggle against. You know, if you look at the Brentford game we mentioned before, that was quite a physical game. They bullied us all over the pitch and they won. And that's the kind of game that we tend to get against you guys. You know, you've got two physical strikers who put it about and you get the ball into them as quickly as you can. And if we can deal with that side of it, then we've got a chance of hopefully our quality players in the final third of the pitch, although they've not been working so far this season with one goal. But we do have quality up that end of the pitch. And if we can get them into the game, I think we can cause your defence problems. But it's going to be a tight game. I'm not expecting it to be a goal fest, a 3-3 draw or anything like that. I think it's going to be very tight, and it may well be one goal either way decides it, or again a draw as it's been in recent years. But it's not going to be a free-flowing game of football, is it? Let's be honest. It's going to be a battle. It's going to be quite physical, and I'm just hoping that we can get the ball down at some point and get our attacking talented players up in the attacking end of the pitch into the game, and then maybe causing you some problems. But we're going to have to be focused for 90 minutes defensively because of the challenge that you guys are going to offer us, and we need to be ready for that. And my worry is with Arteta, he's not very flexible in tactics. He doesn't tend to change the way we play to suit the opposition.
Same as Dyche, at least, mate. Dash is very similar with that.
Yeah, but it possibly is. But I mean, you know, when you're the home team, you know, I suppose it's your responsibility to enforce your game on us, and it's our job to counteract that and try to come up with a plan to be able to win the game. And that's what, you know, when you're away from home, that's what you need to do. You need to adapt. At home, you want to take, you know, you want to play your game when you're at home, don't you? You've got your crowd behind you and that kind of stuff. Whereas when you're away, you have to maybe adapt, and we don't do that particularly well. Although having said that, last year we had quite a good away record because we played teams on the counter attack, and if we do that tomorrow, then we've got a chance because we do have pace going forward. But Burnley aren't a team to throw everything at us in that sense. You're going to be very structured in your 4-4-2, and it doesn't always leave a lot of space on the counter attack. I know we did score on a counter attack against you last season when we drew 1-1, but we're not going to be probably able to do that at will in the game. I think it's going to be a different sort of game, and Arteta needs to be ready for that. He wasn't ready for it against Brentford. He needs to be. He's got a poor record against you guys. I don't think he's beaten you since he's been our manager, actually. So that's a problem because of the challenge that you offer. He hasn't been able to deal with that so far, and that's the key tomorrow. Is if he can set us up right, if he can get us ready for that challenge. I don't know what they've been doing in training, whether they've been working on playing against Burnley, or have they just been working on the normal stuff that they work on without looking at this particular game. And that worries me. That's what we'll be doing. That's what we would have done. And we'll come in tomorrow not really prepared for what we're going to face. Some of the players will know because they've played against you guys before. But ultimately, it's about the way the team's set up, isn't it? And stuff like that. And that's what concerns me. But it's going to be a tight game. There's not going to be a lot in it. And I've got a feeling it's going to be one goal either way. And just hope that from our sake, it's the goal goes out in our favour. But I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't. just because of the way we're playing.
Yeah, you've mentioned the Brentford game 2 or 3 times there, and I do want to pick up on that. Is the way that you lost that game a worry going into the Burnley game? Because Brentford exposed your weaknesses in ways that we probably would expose those weaknesses, with crosses, balls into the box, being nice and physical. And dare I say, Burnley are definitely more experienced than Brentford at doing that, and in my opinion, probably better than Brentford at doing that. So surely that, as an Arsenal fan point of view, that defeat against Brentford should worry you. That is, I'll give you a prediction, obviously, in a minute, but that is when my head chooses a prediction. I think I've already given it you on your podcast. Check it out. Just head over to Over and Over and Over again and check it out. There'll be a link in the description if you want to watch that. But I think I said, like, if we're going to win the game, we're going to turn it into a battle like Brentford did. And when I give my prediction, I normally give it with my head rather than my heart. But when I let my heart take over, my heart starts thinking, well, Brentford did it to him, so maybe we can do it to him. So from our perspective, it makes me wonder, oh, maybe we can beat you. So surely from your perspective, it might be a bit of a worry.
It is a worry. I mean, it's always a worry when we play Burnley for that same reason. But against Brentford, there were a few maybe mitigating circumstances to a degree. We didn't have Gabriel fit, who's our more physical defender. We didn't have Thomas Partey in midfield, again, who offers a more physical presence. And so I think that's going to make a difference. If those two play, I mean, Gabriel will probably certainly play. Partey, there's still a little doubt over how exactly fit he is to start the game. But if those two play, I think that will help to ease some of those issues that we had against Brentford. But yeah, it's a worry. It's always a worry when we play physical teams, because it's not just now. This has been going on for a long time, hasn't it? You know, you remember Stoke back in the day. We always struggled against Stoke. The same thing, different players, but the same outcome. So yeah, it's always a worry as an Arsenal fan when we play teams that play like that. But you know, everybody knows how Burnley are going to play. It's not everybody knew how. If you'd watched Brentford any time last season, which I'm sure Arteta must have done, the coaching staff must have done, you know how Brentford were going to play. We know how Burnley are going to play, and if we can't deal with it on the day, that's down to poor preparation for me. It isn't down to anything else. If you prepare properly, you should be able to cope. And with the extra quality players that potentially we've got, that should be enough. But that's not how football works, is it, unfortunately? And I do feel as though we'll be slightly stronger because we've got Gabriel in defence, and he's a lot better at that side of the game than maybe Rob Holding, who played against Brentford. So Ben White's going to struggle, I think, though. He did struggle badly. He's good with the ball at his feet, and he's good at bringing it out from the back. He reads the game well, but he's not so good in the air. He's not so good at the physical side of it. So that could be a worry. But Gabriel next to him may help. If Thomas Partey's in midfield, he may be able to get around a bit and stop the balls getting into the box, which is important as well. You know, stop the crosses. That's what we need to do as well. The fullbacks are going to have to be on their game. We've got a new Tomiyasu guy as well, playing right back. He looked as though he can deal with the physical side as well. So we've got a slightly different defence, who may be able to cope a bit better than we did against Brentford. But we'll have to see. It is a worry. But if we can, I mean, I said it on my video I did the other day, if we can match Burnley physically, I think we've got enough quality to win the game. But if we're not up for that physical challenge, then we are going to struggle, and it could go the same way the Brentford game went, and that does worry me. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I think you've mentioned it there. I think Ben White against Chris Wood, hopefully, will come out in our favour. But like you said, if Gabriel is back, then it might be a case of, right, you make sure you stick with Chris Wood. Don't let Ben White mark Chris Wood. Hopefully, we can get Ben White against Chris Wood on a few set pieces or crosses and try and expose that. But let's start wrapping up then. We've got obviously the game at the weekend. I've already given my prediction. I think you know my prediction. I've said it on your podcast. But let's get your prediction for the game for our viewers. What do you think it's going to be?
Well, so I think it's going to be a very tight game. There's not going to be a lot in it. It's finished 1-0 quite a few times over the years, this game. And I wouldn't be surprised if it was 1-0. But I've just got a feeling that, you know, with everything that we've said, I do think Burnley are going to score, maybe from a set piece or a ball into the box that we don't deal with particularly well. So I think Burnley will score. And if that's the case, then we're going to have to score 2. And we do have the quality to do that. So I'm going to be bold and predict a 2-1 Arsenal victory. But it's certainly not going to be an easy 2-1 victory. And I think it's going to be a big battle. But I'm going to go with that just because I do feel as though we've got slightly better players overall. And that should hopefully prove decisive, even if we struggle maybe physically sometimes at some points in the game. Yeah,
fair enough. I'm going to go for 1-1. Similar sort of reasons. I think it's going to be tight. I think it's going to be a battle. if we get back to the way we were the last few seasons and we go in front, because I do think we'll go in front. It's a story of our season so far. I think every game we've played 4 games. Out of 3 of them games, we've taken the lead and then been pegged back and lost 2 of them. I think it's going to be quite similar to the Leeds game. I think we'll go 1-0 up probably in the second half. And then get pegged back and probably end up being 1-1. But at this stage, I'll probably take that. I don't know. Like I said, that's my head predicting it. When my heart predicts it, I think, well, Brentford got joy against them, so maybe we can. But then you make good points about players coming back and stuff like that. So, yeah, I understand what you say. But then that's it then for this week's pre-game show. I just want to say thank you, Rich, for coming on.
No, it's been a pleasure. It's great to to speak to you guys again. Obviously, you've been on my channel before as well, and it's always great. And it is great to to get other fans' perspectives on the games, isn't it? As well, I think that's really good, and it's been a pleasure to come on. And yeah, look forward to the game tomorrow. We can both enjoy it in maybe different ways, hopefully.
Yeah. You just want to let everyone know where they can find your podcast and your YouTube channel.
Yeah, the YouTube channel is called Over and Over and Over Again. Obviously, it's Arsenal channel. I do cover the Arsenal women as well. And obviously all things to do with the men's team. I do a lot of stuff on the history of the club as well. Obviously watch alongs the games I'm not at and all that kind of stuff. So it's Over and Over and Over Again on YouTube. So if you want to check that out, please do so. It'd be good to get you involved.
Yeah, happy days. If you've enjoyed the show, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe. We're not too far away now from hitting that 4,000-hour watch mark, which means we can monetize the channel at that point. Although with the amount of views we get, it'll probably be like 1p every month. So that also says to me that a lot of people are watching it, but not too many people are subscribing it. So if you're watching it and you're not subscribed, just give us a shout. Just give it a subscribe, should I say. And also, if you're watching before the Arsenal game, which, it is the pre-game show, so you think you would do, get your comments in below with some predictions. But thanks for watching, and I will hopefully be back on either Saturday evening or Monday at some point for the post-game show. Apologies to everybody who was probably waiting for an Everton post-game show, but I was meant to do it with somebody, and then a few things happened and we couldn't do it, so I didn't manage to get one done. But we'll definitely be back, even if I have to do it myself this time. I'll do a post-game show on the YouTube channel, and then we'll have a pre-game show for the game next week. Who, off the top of my head, I don't even know who it is, but I'm sure we'll figure it out soon and get them on the show like we have done with Rich today. So thanks everybody for watching. Please subscribe, give it a thumbs up, and we'll see you next time.